The Forbidden Temple and the lonely human Jake was tired. His boots were covered in dust and his water bottle was nearly empty. He had been walking through the thick jungle of Virex for 3 days. His team had left 2 weeks ago, thinking. The planet was empty, but Jake stayed behind. Something about this place pulled him in. It felt old, and not just old like ruins. It felt forgotten, like it was sleeping. The trees around him were tall and glowing. Strange bird-like creatures made soft noises in the distance, but Jake didn't care. He was looking for something, maybe treasure, maybe truth, maybe just something new. He was bored of Earth, bored of the same things every day. Virex felt different. It felt like a secret waiting to be told. Then he saw it. Between the tall vines and broken stone walls stood a temple. It was hidden, covered in moss and roots, but it was huge. The shape of it was like a dome, and the entrance looked like the mouth of a beast. On top of the temple was a statue. A giant figure of a woman. Her face was kind but powerful. She had long hair made of stone that fell down her back. Her chest was raised like she was proud, or guarding something. Jake felt his skin tingle. He walked inside the temple. The air was dry, and it smelled like dust and time. On the walls were carvings. Some looked like stars. Others showed tall beings like the statue outside. All of them had their hands out like they were offering something, or begging. In the center of the temple stood the statue again, but smaller. A life-sized version. It looked like the same woman. This time, she stood with her hands by her side, her face calm, eyes closed. She looked like she was sleeping. Jake couldn't help himself. He laughed. You look like a royal guard. Standing here for thousands of years, waiting for someone to say hello, he joked. He walked closer and stared at her chest. Mind if I poke you? He lifted his finger and gently pressed the center of her chest. Nothing happened. He sighed and turned around. Then he heard a crack. He froze. Slowly he turned his head. The statue's chest had a small line on it. The stone was cracking. Another line formed across her neck. A soft light started to glow from inside her eyes. Jake stepped back. His heart pounded. No way, he whispered. The statue's hand twitched. Then it moved fast, reaching out and grabbing his wrist. Jake shouted in shock, but he couldn't pull away. Her grip was strong, even though she still looked half made of stone. Then her mouth opened. Her lips moved slowly. Her voice was soft and strange, like it came from deep under the ground. Cathel, Renti? Jake didn't understand the words, but the way she said them made his blood run cold. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't anger. It was a whisper, like a prayer. Like she had waited for this moment for a very long time. Let go, he said, trying to pull his hand free. But her grip only grew tighter. Suddenly, her eyes opened fully. They glowed bright blue. Her skin began to change. The stone on her face started to peel away like dust, revealing soft, pale skin underneath. Jake was no longer facing a statue. She was waking up. He stared into her glowing eyes, and a strange feeling filled his chest. It wasn't just fear. It was something more. Like something ancient had just looked into his soul. Who are you? He asked. The woman tilted her head. She blinked once, then slowly let go of his hand. She took one step forward. The stone on her legs cracked as she moved. She looked weak, like a person trying to walk after a long sleep. Jake stumbled back, unsure what to do. The walls of the temple began to glow. Symbols lit up one by one, spreading across the stone like fire. They moved in patterns, and Jake could tell they meant something. A message. He looked back at the woman. She was looking around, confused. Then her eyes focused on him again. She took another step. Jake turned to run. But the entrance behind him had sealed shut. He was trapped. And now he wasn't alone. Whatever he had done, it had changed something. He didn't know what those glowing symbols meant, but deep inside, Jake felt the truth. This temple wasn't dead, and the statue he just touched was never just a statue. It was waiting for him. The ancient warning. Jake stood frozen, his back against the wall of the sealed temple. The glowing woman, once a statue, was now fully alive from the waist up. Her lower body still cracked and stiff, but her arms moved freely, and her glowing eyes never left Jake. The strange words she had whispered still echoed in his ears. He didn't know what they meant, but they felt important, like a key to something ancient. She took slow, careful steps toward him. Her bare feet dragged lightly over the stone floor, leaving behind traces of glowing dust. She looked weak, yet every move she made felt full of power. Jake's heart pounded. Should he run? Should he speak? He didn't know. All he knew was he had awakened something that wasn't meant to be disturbed. Suddenly, the lights on the temple walls began to shift. The glowing symbols twisted into new shapes. They moved like they were alive, forming lines and patterns. Some looked like maps. Others looked like warnings. Jake stepped closer, drawn to the wall without thinking. The lights arranged into a clear message. It was written in an alien language, but part of it translated automatically through his data device. One line glowed brighter than the rest. He who awakens her can never leave. Jake's chest tightened. Never leave? Was he trapped now? He turned to the glowing woman. Her eyes watched him gently now, less wild than before. She slowly raised a hand and touched her own chest where he had poked her. Then she pointed at him, then at herself. Jake shook his head. I didn't mean to wake you. I was just curious. She didn't answer. Instead, she lowered her hand and walked past him, deeper into the temple. Jake followed, still unsure if this was a dream or something far more dangerous. As she walked, the lights on the walls followed her like they recognized her. The further they went in, the more the air began to change. It smelled less dusty, more alive. Soon, they reached a large circular room. At the center was a stone pillar covered in carvings. It looked like a record, a story told in pictures. The woman stepped closer and gently placed her glowing hand on it. The pillar lit up. Jake could now see the images clearly. The carvings showed her people, tall, graceful beings. There was a war, a big one. Their planet was attacked by dark creatures made of smoke and teeth. Many of her kind fell. The last few survived by hiding in sleep, turning themselves to stone, waiting for someone to awaken them. But there was more. Jake noticed one image that shocked him. It showed one of her kind like her holding hands with a human, not fighting, not running. Bonded. Double quotes is that, Jake whispered. She turned to him and nodded slowly. Her eyes filled with a strange emotion. Hope. Jake's breath caught. You knew humans before? She didn't speak, but she gently reached for his hand. He let her touch him this time. Her fingers were warm now, not cold like before. The moment they touched, something in the room shifted. A low hum filled the air. The pillar began to spin slowly, showing more images. One showed the same glowing woman surrounded by enemies. Another showed her sleeping alone in a temple. Then an image appeared of Jake himself, standing beside her. Jake stepped back. That's me. But how? He had never been here before. No human had ever found this temple, let alone touched the statue. The glowing woman pointed again to the warning on the wall. He who awakens her can never leave. But maybe it wasn't a curse. Maybe it was a bond. Maybe she wasn't just waking up because of any random touch. Maybe she had been waiting for him, for someone who matched the connection written in the ancient code. Someone who could complete her or protect her. But protect her from what? Suddenly, the floor shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. A loud rumble echoed through the walls. The glowing woman's expression changed instantly. Fear. She grabbed Jake's arm tightly and whispered something again. This time, Jake's translator picked it up. They felt the bond. Jake's blood ran cold. Who felt it? She looked toward the shaking ceiling. Her eyes glowed brighter. The hunters, she whispered. Outside the temple, deep in the dark sky above Virex, something old and angry had just opened its eyes. They had sensed the awakening, and they were coming. Jake stared at her, heart pounding. He didn't understand the full story yet, but he knew one thing for sure. He was no longer just a visitor. Now, he was part of something ancient, something dangerous, and the only way forward was with her. She learns his touch and starts to change. The glowing woman did not speak in full sentences. Her voice was broken and soft, filled with old words. But her eyes never stopped watching Jake. Every movement he made, every sound he spoke, she copied, slowly and carefully. Like a child learning for the first time, she touched her lips when he said, "Hello." She pointed at herself and whispered, "Sira." Jake blinked. "Your name is Sira?" She nodded. It was the first word she spoke that he understood. From that moment, everything changed. Each day that passed, Sira became more alive. The stone on her arms disappeared. Her legs, once heavy and cracked, now moved freely. She walked without pain. Her voice became stronger. She started repeating more of Jake's words. Water, sky, danger, and Jake. His name sounded strange in her mouth, but soft. Like she cared when she said it. They stayed in the glowing temple where food grew in the wild. Garden around the back wall. The temple protected them from the heat of the sun and the strange creatures of the jungle. But something else began to happen. Sira's body started to change when Jake touched her, not just from stone to flesh, but something deeper. The glow in her skin grew brighter when he held her hand. Her eyes sparkled more when he sat close. When he smiled, she smiled too, like the emotion passed through their skin. Jake didn't know why. He had never seen anything like it. Then one morning, she touched his chest. Her fingers rested over his heart. She closed her eyes. "You." "Key," she said slowly. Jake tilted his head. "What do you mean?" Sira opened her eyes and took his hand. She placed it on her own chest right where he had poked her the first time. "Touch woke. Sira," she said. Jake's eyes widened. "I activated you?" She nodded. "Not random match." Jake sat back in silence. She wasn't just some statue that responded to a poke. She had been waiting for someone specific. Someone whose body or soul matched hers in a forgotten way. And somehow, that person was him. But why him? He was just a lonely human explorer running from a boring life back on Earth. He hadn't come looking for love or destiny. Yet, here he was with a glowing alien woman who learned from him, changed because of him, and now claimed they were a match. Sira sat beside him and pointed toward the wall carvings again. New parts had begun to glow, ones that didn't. Before, Jake walked over to see. He saw a picture of a glowing female and a man standing back to back, surrounded by darkness. The female was feeding energy into the man. And in the next image, he gave it back stronger. Together, they created a wave of light that destroyed a black beast made of claws. Jake touched the carving. It felt warm. Sira stood beside him. Bond, protect, both. That word again, bond. Jake slowly looked at her. "So, this is not just about waking you. It's about surviving together?" She nodded. Outside, the sky was dark. Clouds had gathered, strange and thick. A humming sound could be heard in the far distance. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't wind. It felt Wrong. Jake walked out of the temple. The air tasted like metal. The sky was red near the horizon. He turned to Sira. Is this what you meant when you said they felt the bond? Sira stepped forward and closed her eyes. Her hair, now no longer made of stone, lifted slightly in the air. She placed both hands on the ground. Jake watched in silence. Glowing lines spread from her fingers into the soil. They reached the edge of the temple and beyond. The ground responded to her. Sira's eyes opened again. They come, she whispered. Jake grabbed his pack. Then we run. But Sira shook her head. Running, no use. Jake's heart sank. Then what do we do? She touched his hand again. Bond. Must complete. Jake stared at her, confused. How? Sira looked at the center of the temple. The pillar that once showed the carvings had now split open. Inside was a glowing orb. It pulsed like a heart. She pointed. You touch, I follow. Jake felt sweat on his palms. Every instinct told him this was bigger than he could understand, but another feeling inside him whispered something else. Trust her. He walked to the orb and raised his hand. Sira watched him, silent and still. When his fingers touched the light, the temple shook again. But this time, it wasn't fear he felt. It was power. Something had been waiting deep inside this place. Something that had only one rule to awaken it. The human must bond with the last guardian. Jake looked back at Sira. She was smiling, and her smile felt like home. Asterisk, the night she screamed his name, that night the air felt heavier. It wasn't wind or weather. It was pressure, something unseen pressing down on the temple like a warning. Jake couldn't sleep. His heart beat too fast. He sat near the doorway, watching the strange red sky. The moon of Varex had not risen. The stars above looked dimmer, like they were hiding. Sira sat behind him, silent. She no longer glowed brightly. Instead, her light was soft and slow, like a flame running low. She didn't speak much now. Her eyes were closed and her hands rested on the stone floor. Jake looked at her. Are you okay? She didn't answer. He had grown used to her strange ways, half language, half feelings. She was more than alien. She was old, like she carried thousands of years inside her. And tonight, she was still too still. Then suddenly, she screamed. Jake jumped to his feet. Sira fell forward on her hands, her mouth wide open in a cry that didn't sound human. Her body shook. Glowing veins flashed across her skin. Her back arched as if something invisible had struck her. Jake ran to her side. Sira, what's happening? She looked at him with wild, shining eyes. They're close. Hunters. Jake's skin went cold. She clutched his arm tightly, her nails digging in. They see the bond. They hate it. Jake helped her sit against the wall. She was breathing hard, her light flickering. Who are they, Sira? Why do they want? To stop us? Her head turned slowly. They destroyed my kind? Long ago. They hate our light. They feed on it. They kill the bond. Jake stared at her. Why me then? Why does the bond work with a human? She shook her head weakly. I don't know. The stars chose. Only humans can wake us. Outside, something howled. Not an animal. It was low, deep, and hungry. Jake grabbed his old laser tool, the only weapon he had. It wasn't strong, but it was something. He moved to the entrance and peeked out, and then he saw a dot in the dark jungle beyond the temple. Lights were moving, green lights, scanning the trees. Figures walked slowly between the vines. They were tall, thin, and twisted. Their bodies were not flesh, but some kind of living metal covered in bones and wires. Their faces were hidden behind masks. Their arms were long, ending in claws. Jake's mouth went dry. 3 of them, and they were heading straight for the temple. He turned back to Sira. We have to run. Syrah tried to stand but stumbled. Too late. Jake caught her. Her legs were cold again, like the energy was leaving her. The bond was weakening. Jake placed his hand on her chest. Her glow brightened slightly. You need me, he said. She nodded. We must stay close, very close. She touched the spot on his chest where his heart beat. You carry the spark now. Without you, I fade. The ground shook. The temple lights began to dim. Jake helped her to her feet. They backed into the center room where the glowing orb still floated above the broken pillar. It pulsed like a warning signal. Then the first hunter entered. It was taller than Jake. Its eyes were red. Its body made no sound when it moved, but the air around it crackled. It stepped into the light, staring at Syrah with burning hatred. Syrah cried out and clung to Jake. They smell the bond? They will break it. Jake stood in front of her, not without a fight. The hunter raised its arm. A blade grew from its hand. Before it could strike, the orb above the pillar pulsed bright. Jake's arm lifted on its own. Syrah gasped. The orb glowed stronger, and a beam of light shot into Jake's chest. He cried out, falling to his knees. Syrah ran to him, holding him tightly. Then something strange happened. Jake's skin glowed. For the first time, he felt what she felt, every emotion, every memory. He saw flashes of Syrah's world before it fell. He felt her pain, her loneliness, her long sleep. He felt her hopes, her fears, her desire for peace, and her fear of losing it again. Jake opened his eyes. They were glowing. Syrah looked at him in shock. You carry the light. Jake stood up slowly. The hunter stepped back. Now the light inside him was too bright to ignore. Jake reached out his hand toward the hunter, and the creature growled and fled back into the shadows. But Jake knew it wasn't over. They would return. In greater numbers. Stronger. But so would he. Because now he wasn't just a human. He was bonded to something older than war, older than hate. He was the spark. And Syrah was the flame. The hunters of the forgotten code. The next morning, the jungle was silent. Not peaceful. Silent. No bird sounds, no wind. Even the insects were gone. Jake stood near the edge of the temple, gripping the stone wall. His eyes scanned the trees. Nothing moved, but the feeling in the air was clear. They were being watched. Inside the temple, Syrah sat cross-legged on the glowing floor, her body slowly recovering. The night had drained her, but she was healing again. The light in her skin had returned, though it flickered now and then like a candle in the wind. Jake turned to her. Why did they run last night? That creature could have killed us. Syrah looked at him calmly. They feared the bond. Jake frowned. But why? They're stronger. She shook her head. The bond is not just love. It's power. Old power. Forbidden to them. Jake sat down beside her. Tell me what they are. Syrah took a long breath. Her voice was slow and clear now. They were once like us, creators, guardians, but they chose hunger. They broke the code. They began feeding on energy from others, from bonded pairs. Jake's eyes narrowed. They eat. Connection? Syrah nodded. Yes, light from bonds feeds life. But they twisted it. They became hunters. They take, but give nothing. Jake remembered the image on the temple wall, the dark figures crushing the glowing couples. It wasn't just war. It was hatred for what made others strong. They destroyed your people, Jake whispered. They tried, Syrah said, her voice harder now. Some escaped. Some became stone to hide. Jake looked around. So this place was a shelter. Yes. A final haven. But only a match could open it. Jake felt a cold truth rise inside him. And I matched it, Syrah nodded. You carry the right pattern. Human code fits the ancient link. He looked at his hands. But I'm just a man. No, she said softly. You are the key. The temple suddenly pulsed. The carvings on the walls shifted again, revealing new images. Jake stood up. The pictures showed the hunters, hundreds of them, rising from the shadows, crossing stars, heading for one glowing planet. Vrex. The bond had called them. Jake clenched his fists. They're coming for you. Syrah stood, her body now glowing brighter. No, Jake. They're coming for us. Suddenly, a deep voice echoed from the far wall. It wasn't from Syrah. It came from the stone. Jake stepped back as a hidden panel opened. A tall figure appeared, made of shimmering light. Not real, but a memory. It was one of Syrah's kind. His voice filled the room. If you see this, the code has been awakened. The hunters will rise again. But so will our light. Only the bond can command the old weapon. Only the chosen pair can stand in the core. Jake looked at Syrah. What's the core? She turned to the back of the temple, a place below, hidden for thousands of years. It holds the weapon, but also the truth. The voice continued. Be warned. The weapon can destroy the hunters, but it takes a price. The bond must be complete. One heart, one soul. If broken, all will fall. The message ended. The room went dark for a second, then the light returned. Jake swallowed hard. So we have a choice. Syrah nodded. Yes. Fight or fall. Jake took her hand. Then we fight. She looked at their joined hands and smiled, but it was a sad smile. You are brave, but the hunters will not fight fair. That afternoon they entered the lower part of the temple. A hidden door opened after Syrah touched the wall with both hands. The stairs were steep and cold. Below, the core chamber waited. It was unlike anything Jake had seen. A glowing platform hovered over a pool of light. Symbols floated in the air, moving like stars in space. In the center, a broken machine waited. It was round and smooth, but covered in cracks. Wires pulsed weakly from it like veins. Syrah stepped forward. This is the heart of the world, the last weapon of my kind. Jake touched it. Can it be fixed? She nodded slowly. Yes, with the bond. Jake stepped onto the platform beside her. As their hands touched the machine, it began to hum. Lights woke up. Energy moved between them like sparks, and far above, in the dark red sky, the hunters screamed. They had felt the weapon stir. They were coming faster now, faster than ever before, and this time, they would not run, but neither would Jake. Because now, the bond was real. And the light inside him was burning brighter. Her final form and the human key. The temple shook. Dust fell from the ceiling as deep rumbling echoed through the underground chamber. Jake stood with his hand on the ancient machine. Syrah stood beside him, her skin glowing brighter than ever before. The connection between them was no longer just energy. It felt like one heartbeat. The core machine had awakened. The lights around. The platform floated faster now, circling them like tiny stars. The broken parts of the device began pulling together. Cracks sealed. The chamber grew warmer. Something old had returned to life, but Syrah's body had changed too. Her glow had turned golden. Her eyes, once soft blue, now blazed with sharp white light. Her hair lifted slowly, as if caught in a wind that didn't exist. The lines on her skin shimmered like flowing light. She looked like more than a woman now. She looked like a goddess. Jake watched her in awe. Syrah, you're changing. She looked at him and smiled gently. No, I'm becoming what I was always meant to be. She walked to the center of the platform and reached out both hands. But I cannot complete it alone. Jake stepped forward. What do I do? She took his hand and placed it on her heart again. You are the final code. The bond isn't just emotion, it's design. Only with human touch can the core activate. Only with trust. Can the weapon work? Jake nodded, his throat dry. I trust you. The moment he said it, the chamber roared. Light burst from the machine. The floating symbols shot into the air, forming a glowing spiral above them. The platform rose higher, and the air vibrated like a storm was building inside the temple. Jake's chest burned, not with pain, but with power. The same energy that lived in Sira now flowed through him. He saw her memories, all of them. Her people, her fall, her long sleep, and her waiting for someone who matched her light. Someone who could carry the weight of the bond. Jake. The machine's voice finally spoke, deep and ancient. Core reactivated. Bond complete. Weapon ready. Far above, outside the temple, the sky cracked open. The hunters had arrived. Dozens of them. They hovered over the jungle. Black ships shaped like claws. They made no sound. They simply floated, watching, waiting. Then one ship opened. A massive figure stepped out. Taller than all the others. Its armor was made of bones. Its face was hidden behind a dark spiked mask. This one was not a scout. It was a leader. Sira looked up. Her voice was firm. That is the first hunter. The one who broke the code first. He is the reason the bond was nearly lost. Jake asked, "Can we fight him?" She didn't answer right away. Then she took both of Jake's hands and held them tightly. If we fall apart now, we die. But if we stand together, if we trust the bond, we are more than a weapon. Jake nodded slowly. Then let's finish this. Outside, the ground shook again. The hunters began to descend, walking through the jungle toward the temple. The creatures moved without fear. They thought nothing could stop them, but they had never faced a human with the ancient. Bond. Jake and Sira stepped back onto the platform. The machine lit up, brighter than before. The walls around them disappeared into white light. Then the platform rose through the ground, through stone and root, until it reached the top of the temple. Jake blinked against the wind. They were above everything now. The jungle stretched below like a green sea. The hunter army stood at the edge, dark and cold. Sira looked at him, no longer shaking, no longer unsure. Are you ready? She asked. Jake smiled. Let's show them what happens when you touch the wrong statue. She laughed, for the first time, a real laugh. And then the weapon spoke one final time. Bond accepted. Defense system online. Execute final light. Jake and Sira held each other's hands. Their bodies began to rise, surrounded by energy. The sky darkened. The clouds parted. The first hunter stepped forward, and Jake stared back without fear. Because now he knew he wasn't a visitor. He was the answer, and she was his flame. Together, they were something new. Something the hunters feared. Not because of weapons. Not because of ships. But because they still had each other, and that made them unstoppable. Asterisk. The last stand of the human and the statue goddess. Sky was red. The wind was still, and the jungle held its breath. On top of the ancient temple, two figures stood surrounded by a circle of light, one human, one not. Jake and Sira were no longer just two souls lost on a forgotten planet. Now, they were the last hope of a bond. Older than war itself, below the hunters gathered in silence. Dozens of them, all with black armor, glowing red eyes, and sharp metal claws. In the center stood their leader, the first hunter. Taller than the rest, wrapped in bone armor and shadow. His eyes glowed brighter than fire. He raised one long arm toward the temple. Then he pointed at Jake. Sira's voice was calm, but filled with power. He wants to break the bond. If you die, I fall. If I fall, the light dies. Jake stared at the hunter. Then he'll have to try. The platform beneath them pulsed. The weapon was ready. The machine's energy flowed through their hands and into their bodies. The temple itself had become part of them. Alive. The first hunter stepped forward. The others followed. They didn't rush. They didn't shout. They simply walked, sure they would win. They had killed bonded pairs before. They believed this would be no different. But this time was not the same. This time the bond was human. Jake looked at Sira. What do we do? She closed her eyes. Let me lead. You follow. Jake nodded. Always. Then the temple exploded with light. A dome of energy shot into the sky, stopping the hunters in their tracks. The glow was so strong that the jungle lit up like it was day. The hunters raised their arms to block it, but the light burned through them. One hunter fell, then another. The first hunter roared. He charged. Jake and Sira lifted into the air, glowing like stars. Their hands still linked, their bodies floating above the temple. Around them, the weapon moved, spinning and releasing rings of golden light. Jake felt something inside him open. It wasn't power like strength or speed. It was memory. He saw Earth. He saw his childhood. He saw all the lonely days that brought him here. And then he saw her. Waiting in the dark, waiting for someone to believe. He held her hand tighter. She looked at him. I was alone for thousands of years, but the moment you touched me, I woke up. Jake smiled, and I'll never let go. The first hunter leaped into the sky, a giant blade in his hand, ready to strike. Jake felt fear, but Sira didn't. Pulled Jake forward, and they moved together as one. The sky broke open as a beam of energy burst from their bond. It struck the first hunter mid-air, shattering his blade. He roared in rage and crashed to the ground. Still alive, but not untouched. He rose again, slower now, wounded, bleeding black smoke. He raised his hand once more, but this time the other hunters hesitated. They looked at him, then at the light above, then at each other, and they dropped their weapons. One by one, Sira floated gently to the ground. Her light dimmed to a soft, steady glow. Jake followed beside her, his feet landing on the temple stones. The first hunter stood alone now. Weak, broken, and surrounded. Sira stepped forward. You killed my people. You broke the code, but the bond has returned, and now you are nothing. The first hunter made one last sound, a growl filled with rage and fear. Then he vanished in a cloud of smoke. Gone. The sky cleared. The jungle breathed again, and the hunters, now free from his control, bowed their heads and disappeared into the forest. Jake turned to Sira. Is it over? She looked up at the sky. The danger is gone, but the bond is forever. Jake smiled. Then I'm not going anywhere. Sira reached out and touched his face. You weren't just the key, Jake. You were the answer. The light needed a heart, and yours was strong enough. The temple light slowly faded, resting. The stars above returned, brighter than ever. Jake and Sira sat at the edge of the temple, side by side. No more hunters. No more fear. Just two beings, once strangers, now forever connected. The statue was no longer stone. The human was no longer alone. And the bond? The bond was legend now.